Tomas was washing a window on the 24th floor of a large office building, and suddenly he heard someone screaming. The guy looked outside and saw a lady falling from the 30th floor. But in 5 minutes, the woman was standing on the ground, totally unharmed. How did she survive? Take a closer look at the sky. Yes, it's Superman! He saved the lady. Look at the picture. What's wrong here? Watermelons don't grow on palms. Twin brothers Stan and Ken had been working hard. They wanted to collect money for their mother's anniversary. Unfortunately, they didn't manage to save enough to buy her the car of her dreams. The brothers were very upset and agreed to go shopping the next day and pick another gift. At night, Ken couldn't fall asleep because he got a genius idea. While his twin was sleeping, Ken secretly took all their savings and headed to a casino. It was his lucky night. He tripled the sum. In the morning, Ken put all the money back in the box and fell asleep. Stan woke up, opened the box, and immediately realized that Ken had touched their savings. He didn't even need to count the money to understand that. How did Stan figure it out? In the box, there were large and small bills in the evening, but now there are only large ones. Kelly was traveling and discovered a beautiful abandoned castle. She entered the building and went downstairs. She was taking pictures when someone locked her inside the basement. Kelly looked around and saw 3 tunnels leading to freedom. In the first tunnel, a huge hungry monster was waiting for her. The second tunnel was full of snakes, and the third tunnel was filled with sleeping gas. In 5 minutes, Kelly was outside the castle, running to the nearest police station. How did she escape? She used her headband as a mask and ran away through the third door. Look at these animals attentively. What's wrong with this picture? This little guy on the left is listening to music. 2 sisters went on a hike. Each of them took a box of matches. Nellie put her matches in a bag together with toothpaste, and Shelley decided to store her matches in a bag with nail polish. While the sisters were walking through the forest, they accidentally fell into a huge puddle. When they got out of it, Shelley suggested making a fire to dry their clothes and cook something to eat. Both sisters took out their matches. Unfortunately, Nellie's matches were covered in toothpaste, and Shelley's were in nail polish. Both girls left the matches to dry in the sun and left to collect some firewood. It started raining, and all the matches got soaked. But 10 minutes later, the sisters still managed to make a fire and toast some marshmallows. Whose matches did they use? They used Shelley's matches. The nail polish dried and made them waterproof. If you don't keep it, it'll break. What is it? It's a promise. Susan was asked to describe her sons. She said, "They're all redheads but 3, all blondes but 3, all brunettes but 3, and all pink-haired but 3. How many sons did Susan have? The answer is 4. 1 redhead, 1 pink-haired, 1 brunette, and 1 blonde. Lisa was a famous top model. She was found unconscious in her dressing room during a photo shoot and taken to a hospital. Doctors said she had a severe allergic reaction, but when Lisa came to herself, she insisted she hadn't eaten anything all day. The model's manager was very concerned and interrogated everyone who had been around Lisa. The stylist said she had applied Lisa's makeup and, indeed, hadn't seen her eating anything. The cleaning lady said she had cleaned the dressing room with organic, non-allergenic products. Lisa's main rival, Nora, said she had been watching the shooting all day long. She hadn't noticed anything suspicious. Who's the culprit? It was the stylist. Lipstick was the only thing Lisa could have swallowed that day. Look at the pictures. Which of these people is a risk taker? The girl is risking less. She's sitting on the second floor, and there's a pool below. The guy is risking more. The building he's sitting on is taller. You can see clouds and planes in the sky. What food can you never cheer up? A blueberry, because it's always blue. Haha. Okay, let's move on. There are 5 lemons in a bowl. You take away 3 of them. How many lemons do you have now? Well, you have the 3 lemons you took. King Gerald has a very beautiful daughter named Teresa. 4 princes from different countries came to the kingdom, hoping to marry the girl. But the king decided to check how smart they were and organized a special contest. Teresa was in the center of a 200 by 200 foot room, and the princes were standing on small boxes in each corner of the room. The first prince to touch Teresa's hand would become her husband, but they weren't allowed to leave their places or use anything but their hands or wits. One of the princes figured out what to do immediately. He married the princess. What did he do? He just asked Teresa to come over and touched her hand. You can easily find me on Earth, Mars, Mercury, and even Jupiter, but you'll never find me on the Moon, Venus, or Pluto. What am I? I'm the letter R. Manager George received an anonymous text message. It said a robber had just entered the supermarket where he worked. George hurried into the hall and saw 4 pregnant women in the grocery section. The man looked at the ladies attentively, detected the thief, and called the police. How did he know? The woman on the right is the only one who doesn't have a shopping basket or cart. She's putting groceries inside her fake belly. Imagine that you're in a room with no windows and no doors. How can you get out? Just stop imagining the room. Mrs. Victoria decided to give her grandson Rick an unusual gift for his 18th birthday. She called him into her room, showed the guy her safe, and handed him a corked bottle with a key inside.
Honey, this is the key to my safe. You can keep all the money you find there if you manage to open it. But you must take the key out without removing the cork or breaking the bottle. Good luck.
Rick accepted the challenge and started thinking about the puzzle. What would you do to get the key out? Push the cork into the bottle, and you'll easily get the key. Look at the picture. What's wrong here? The lady's reflection is holding the bag in the wrong hand. Amy had a crush on her neighbor. She went to the local witch, Sally, to ask for her help. Sally said she would make a purple love potion. On the night of the full moon, Sally took a sheet of paper with her granny's love potion recipe. She mixed all the ingredients except for the last one. Suddenly, a gust of wind threw the recipe into the fireplace. Sally was desperate. She didn't remember the name of the last ingredient, but she still knew for sure that the potion should be purple. Help Sally finish her work. She should add the blue ingredient. When you mix blue and red, they make purple. Harry and 3 other video bloggers traveled to a creepy canyon. They wanted to make a video about this mysterious place. They had been filming all day long. In the evening, they gathered around the fire, but it started to rain and everyone went to sleep in their tents. In the morning, Harry woke up, left his tent, and headed to the big bag with food to grab something for breakfast. That's when he discovered that all the food was gone. Harry got angry. He woke everyone up and interrogated the members of his team. Fred said he'd been looking at the starry sky all night. Jane said she'd been trying to catch a Wi-Fi signal to have a video chat with her boyfriend. And Sam said he'd been sleeping. Who is lying? It's Fred. It was raining at night, and he couldn't see any stars through the clouds. 2 students, Betty and Sarah, went for a walk after a very stressful test. They bought some coffee and candies and began to look for a picturesque spot for a picnic in the park. But suddenly, a guy in a mask grabbed Betty's bag and ran away. Sarah and Betty followed him. At one point, they saw a blind man sitting on a bench. He was wearing glasses and had a cane. The girls asked him if he'd seen a person in a mask carrying a female bag, but the man said he couldn't have seen anyone because he was blind. Sarah got very embarrassed, handed him a candy, and thanked him for his help. Then the girl took Betty aside and whispered that the blind man was the robber. They needed to call the police. Betty was very surprised. Why did Sarah decide the man was the robber? If the man was indeed blind, he wouldn't have seen the candy. Will's mother has 3 sons, Fred, Peter, and... Will. It's Will's mother, after all. 2 mothers and 2 daughters spent all day shopping, but they only bought 6 dresses. This was enough for each of them to have 2 dresses. How is that possible? Only 3 people went shopping: a mother, her daughter, and her daughter's daughter. One of them is a daughter and a mother at the same time, and each of the 3 purchased 2 new dresses.
Detective James Anderson stopped the man who was leaving a clothing store. The sales assistant claims you've stolen some expensive gloves. These are my gloves, I've had them for ages. But the detective immediately understood the man was lying. How? The man wouldn't be able to use these gloves. They are both for the same hand. A phone call woke Detective Anderson early in the morning. "My house has been burgled," Mr. Harrison shouted. When James arrived at the man's house, he heard the following story. "While I was away on business, my neighbor Adam was looking after my house." That's when Adam decided to chip in. "I heard some noise coming from Mr. Harrison's house yesterday. I came up to the window to check if everything was okay. It was very cold, and the window was completely frozen. I breathed on the glass to unfreeze it a bit and saw that everything inside was in a mess. I immediately called Mr. Harrison." "And now," Detective Anderson said, "tell us where the stuff you stole from your neighbor is." How did James understand Adam was guilty? Windows freeze from the inside, not outside. A rich man's wife disappeared from the hotel where she was staying. Detective Anderson had to inform and question her husband. He found the man on his own island. "I've been here for the last 2 months. I asked my family and staff not to come and distract me. I'm writing a book. And over the past several weeks, I've been working from early morning to late evening. I haven't even left this cabin." Anderson immediately understood the man was lying. How? There's only a thick notebook and a pen on the man's desk. If he had been writing as much as he claimed, the ink would have finished long ago. Mr. Dillon sold beautiful rare vases. There were dozens of them on the shelves of his store. One day, the man called the police. When they arrived, the owner had his head bandaged. His store was a mess. These guys ran into my store and grabbed the money and the most expensive vases. Then they hit me on the head and I blacked out. Detective Anderson immediately understood that Mr. Dillon was lying to get the insurance money. How did they figure it out? Even though most of the vases are on the floor, they aren't even cracked. But if the vases had fallen down from the shelves during the robbery, they would have been shattered. Janet called the police. "I was crossing the road when a car almost ran me down. I fell down and hit my head." When the police officers arrived at the place of the accident, Janet showed them the car that, as she thought, had almost hit her. The driver arrived at that moment. He denied doing it. Detective Anderson asked Janet to calm down. It really wasn't the car they needed to look for. How did he understand it? It was raining when Janet was crossing the road, but there's a dry spot under the man's car. It means it had been standing there for a long time and couldn't have hit Janet. Look at these two bloggers. As you can see, they both seem to be very popular. They also have the same amount of likes. But there's something wrong with one of them. She must be hiding something. What is it? The girl on the right is probably trying to save money at the moment. The logo on her bag looks like the Chanel logo, but it's written Gucci underneath. Detective Anderson was on a train. He had very nice fellow travelers. They were talking and laughing when the train entered a tunnel. Everything was plunged into darkness for several minutes. When the train left the tunnel, one of the passengers, Ella, exclaimed, "My diamond brooch! It's gone!" Everyone started talking nervously, looking at one another. That's when Anderson calmly said, "I know who took the brooch. I saw it." How could he see it? One of the travelers had a watch with luminous hands, and when this guy moved his hand to take the brooch, James noticed it. It was a scorching hot day when Larry made a bet with his friends. The guy told them that water produced by different companies tastes different too. At that time, they were chilling in the garden of one of Larry's friends, drinking water and lemonade. "You can blindfold me. I'll take a sip from 2 bottles of water, the one we have on the table and the one you'll bring from the kitchen." I noticed it was another producer. I bet I'll be able to tell the difference. Then he did exactly that. His friends were ready to give Larry the money he had won, but Detective Anderson, yep, he was there too, cut in. "You were cheating," he said. Why did he think so? It was an extremely hot day. No wonder the water that had been outside for several hours was much warmer than the water brought from the kitchen. Rachel called the police early in the morning. When they arrived, she told the officers her story. "I work in a museum. Yesterday I took home several ancient books. I wanted to do some research. But then a blackout happened. I lit a couple of candles and continued my work. Suddenly I heard the doorbell ring. When I opened the door, someone in a black mask hit me on the head. When I came to my senses, the books were gone." Detective Anderson arrested the woman for misreporting. Why? If there had been a blackout, the doorbell wouldn't have been working. Detective Anderson was walking along the river when he heard someone screaming. It was a young woman. She was drowning. James immediately left his shoes and backpack on the ground and dove into the water. Luckily, he was in time. When James was pulling the woman out of the river, he saw a passerby standing next to his stuff. Unfortunately, I can't swim, but I looked after your things," the man said. "Then why did you rummage in my backpack?" James asked. How did he understand someone had opened his backpack? When he dropped the bag on the ground, the zipper was on the left side, but now it's on the right. Detective Anderson found out a smuggler was going to leave the country through the largest airport in the city. He arrived there and detained 3 suspects. Look at them and try to figure out who the smuggler is. It's the 3rd passenger. His suitcase is full of totally random stuff. Women's shoes, some rugs, old dirty jeans, a wig. Plus, when closed, the suitcase looks much larger than when it's open. Detective Anderson's friend, Jose, hurt his knee while playing frisbee. The doctor let the guy stay at home, but by no means was he allowed to get up from his bed. Anderson was also there, and he promised the doctor to look after his friend. But at some point, he had to go away for several hours. He asked his sister Sarah to take care of Jose. When James returned, Sarah told him Jose had followed the instructions and had been sleeping for the whole day. But when Anderson entered his friend's room, he immediately realized the man had gotten up. How did he understand this? Jose moved his bedside lamp from the desk to his nightstand and plugged it in. Detective Anderson's sister, Sarah, was married to Michael, a professional cyclist. One Saturday morning, James came to visit them and noticed that everyone was extremely nervous. It turned out Michael was going to have a challenging cycling tournament. "I promise I'll bring you the bouquet they give to the winner," Michael told Sarah. 4 hours later, he indeed came back with beautiful flowers. But James realized right away Michael hadn't won the tournament. How? The flowers are actually from Sarah's garden. Detective Anderson was driving along a dangerous mountain road. Suddenly, he hit the brakes. He saw a man sitting on the side of the road crying. It turned out the man didn't manage to control his car. It fell off the road, and the man got thrown out of the window. Right now, his very expensive vehicle was beyond repair. "Could you be my witness when I prepare the documents for my insurance company?" James agreed, but asked the man to show him what was inside the car. The man took the key out of his pocket and unlocked the damaged vehicle. "I won't take part in this fraud," Detective Anderson said. Why did he think the man was lying? If the man had been thrown out of the car, the key would still be in the ignition. Detective Anderson's friend Hannah called him and asked the man to visit her. She said it had to do with her husband, Martin. "He told me he had to go on a business trip to the mountains. He didn't really want to go there because he hates cold weather. But he had to, so we packed tons of warm clothes and left. When Martin arrived there, he sent me a photo from his hotel room. I feel something's wrong with this picture, but what exactly?" Anderson needed no more than a glance at the photo, and he realized Martin had indeed lied to his wife. How did he figure it out? There are palm trees outside the window. Those trees don't grow in cold climates.
A shrill ringing of your phone jolts you awake. Your friend, the best detective in the city, is on the line.
I don't have time to explain. I'm leaving the city in 20 minutes. You'll have to replace me for the next week or 2. Don't try to contact me.
As he hangs up, you're left sitting on your bed, the phone in your hand, staring into the darkness of your room. You have to deal with your first case already in the morning. An anxious man rushes into your friend's office. "I work as a cashier in a clothing store. Last night, I was the one to lock it up. As I was counting the money, the room suddenly went dark. There was some problem with the light bulb. I climbed the table and grabbed it, but by doing it, I burned my hand, jerked it back, fell to the floor, and lost consciousness. When I came to my senses, the money was gone." You examine the room attentively and realize the man is lying. What makes you think so? The light bulb the cashier told you about is an LED one. Such light bulbs don't get hot. Your first real case makes you hungry. You go to the nearest restaurant to get something to eat, but as soon as you enter, you hear loud, angry voices. A waitress and a visitor are arguing.
You also ordered chicken wings, and you have to pay for this dish.
It's the waitress. The visitor looks tired and sleepy. But I didn't. I haven't been here longer than an hour. Yes, I did doze off, but it doesn't mean I don't remember my order. You can't help but step in. You know very well that this man couldn't have ordered chicken wings, you say. How did you figure it out? You spotted a note on the wall. It says, "The kitchen works till 1 p.m. today." It's now 3 p.m. The man claims he's been there for an hour, which means he came well after the kitchen was closed. After the accident, you decide to have a meal at another cafe. But as you come closer, you see a crying lady.
I was going to cross the road when some woman grabbed my purse and disappeared. I noticed her enter this cafe. Can you help me get my things back?
You enter the cafe.
Ah, that's my purse, right between those two women. But I can't recognize the one who took it. I didn't have time to look at her attentively.
You don't need much time to figure out which woman is guilty. It's the one on the left. The woman on the right has her left arm in a cast. If she had taken the purse, she'd have put it on the right side of herself. After such an eventful day, you're exhausted. You fall asleep as soon as your head touches the pillow. But you get woken up just a few hours later. Another day, another case.
Oh, you're finally here.
A man tied to a chair looks happy.
Someone broke into my house this night, tied me, and stole all our valuables. Our mailman came early in the morning to deliver newspapers. He must have heard me shouting for help and called the police. Luckily, all our stuff was insured. But I hope to deal with this problem before my wife finds out about this.
You arrest the man for attempting insurance fraud. Why? You paid attention that the newspapers were on the table in the hall, not lying on the floor near the mail slot. Someone must have put them there. It could only be the house owner or his wife, who was an accomplice. After the police arrive, you leave the man's house and immediately receive a new call. Mrs. Smith claims that her neighbor, Mrs. Miller, has stolen her laundry. The woman says she hung the laundry in her backyard at 10 a.m. And when she went out of the house 2 hours later, she saw Mrs. Miller putting it in her bag.
I didn't do this. It's a lie.
The other woman looks angry. You look around and ask Mrs. Smith to go to the police station with you for trying to slander her neighbor. How did you figure out that Mrs. Smith was lying? It's freezing outside, and there's snow on the roofs. In 2 hours, damp laundry would be so frozen, it'd be impossible to fold it and put it in a bag. Your phone rings again. It's a woman who works at a museum.
You must help me,
she cries. When you arrive at the museum, she tells you her story.
Yesterday, I stayed late at work. I needed to prepare some documents. I was sitting at this table. The overhead lights were off, and the only source of light was my desk lamp. I was listening to music when suddenly I saw a shadow to the right of the table. I realized it was a person jumping out of the open window. I immediately switched on the overhead lights and discovered that an ancient vase I kept in my office was gone. This vase cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
You didn't believe this story. Why? If the only source of light had been a desk lamp standing in front of the woman, she wouldn't have noticed the shadow to the right of the table. It turns out that before leaving, your detective friend gave your contacts to all his acquaintances. And now, one of them needs your help. You arrive at his jewelry store. A client came there several hours ago, planning to buy an expensive diamond ring for his wife. But someone stole his wallet right in the store. The manager, he was the one to call you, asked all the visitors who were inside at that time to stay until your arrival. You look at all these people attentively. Soon you know who took the wallet. It's the man in the middle. He has a bandage on his right arm, but it's wrapped over the sleeve of his jacket, not hidden under it, like a real bandage would be. You knock on a sturdy brown door, while a woman with a bandage on her head stands next to you. A man opens the door. "Excuse me," you say. "A pot plant fell out of your window an hour ago and hit this woman on her head. I had to take her to the hospital. She's okay now, but you need to compensate this woman for the damage. May we come in?" The man turns pale, but lets you in.
It can't be true. Our windows were closed because we've just returned home. I literally entered my apartment 2 minutes before you came.
You realize this man is lying and call the police. How did you figure it out? You spotted a pan with boiling water in the kitchen. If the man had indeed come home just a few minutes ago, the water wouldn't have had enough time to start boiling. Now, it's your friend who needs help. She owns a grocery store. A gust of wind blew a $100 bill out of her hands, and the money seems to have vanished into thin air. Your friend thinks it was one of the customers who took the bill, but no one wants to admit stealing the money. You ask all visitors to go to your friend's office when a woman speaks up.
It's incredible to be accused of theft. Here, you can check my bags right now.
Please, just come with me to the office. We'll figure it out there, you say. After the woman refuses to follow you, you call the police. Why? The woman is standing on the $100 bill. If she follows you, everyone will see the money. The next morning, rainy and gloomy, you get your next case. To investigate it, you need to visit the office of a large international company. Rebecca, the girl who called you, works there. She says, "I've just come back from brunch and discovered that someone had knocked our HR manager out just an hour ago." You question the people who were in the office at that time. Laura is an applicant. She says she was a bit angry with the HR manager. He made her wait well past her appointment time.
"And still," the girl says, "I would never hit another person. I'm also too weak to do it."
Gary, who works in the marketing department, claims he hasn't seen the HR manager since he arrived at work. He was in a meeting from the very morning till lunchtime. Jacob from Research and Development tells you he rode his bike to a coffee shop to get his cappuccino. He's just come back. You immediately realize who hit the HR manager. It was Jacob. Both his bike and his clothes are dry and clean. How is that possible if it's raining outside? You leave Rebecca's office and hear your phone beeping. You see a text with an address you don't know. You drive there. A man meets you at the door of a large building. He's shaking. When you enter a large dark hall, you see 2 containers filled with transparent liquid. 2 women are floating inside. They look identical.
"One of them is my wife, but I can't figure out which one, and I'm allowed to open only one container."
You walk around the women and examine them. Then you point at one of them. That's your wife. How did you figure it out? The man's name is Mark. It's written on his biker jacket. His wife is the woman with the letter M tattooed on her arm. Your phone beeps again. You look at it and see a message. It's from your detective friend. There's just one word on the screen. Help! But that's already another story.
Look at the picture attentively. Can you say who didn't help to build the doghouse? Yep, it's the man on the right. He's holding a brick, but the doghouse is made of wood. Sarah was a popular guitar player in a rock band. On Friday, the band was going to have a big gig. Sarah's bandmates were waiting for her, but the girl was very late. Eventually, she did show up, but it wasn't Sarah. It was her twin sister, Alice. She was envious of Sarah, so she locked her sister in a room, took her clothes and the guitar, and pretended to be a band member. But as soon as the musicians saw fake Sarah, they immediately knew she wasn't their bandmate. How did they understand? Look at how long the girl's nails are. But you need to have short nails to play the guitar. A man came to a fruit market to sell watermelons. After he sold half of them and half of a watermelon, he saw he had one watermelon left. How many watermelons did he bring to the market? He came there with 3 watermelons. Cheryl ran into the house, extremely worried. "I set off as soon as I heard the news," she told the police officer. "I was at my parents' house in another town. I left a week ago and was supposed to stay there for at least 10 more days. What's happened to my husband?" "Somebody hit Mr. Brown on the head. He was taken to a hospital, but he's going to be okay. I've been questioning the suspects." Mr. Brown's secretary said, "He sent me to his business partner earlier in the morning. Some important documents needed signatures." The cook said, "I haven't left the kitchen today. Mr. Brown wanted me to prepare a meal for the whole family." The housekeeper said, "I didn't hear anything. I was doing some household chores all day long. After that, I was so tired, I decided to take a nap." The detective realized who the culprit was in no time. Who was it? It was the cook. Mrs. Brown's wife was out of town. There was no need to cook a lot all day long. Olivia was running a marathon. Right before the finish line, she did her best and outran the person who was running in second place. The woman was happy. She was going to win. But in a few seconds, she got very disappointed. Why? Olivia was in second place. She was faster than the person in the second place, but not the first. Look at this image attentively. Can you guess which person is a ghost? Look at the woman on the right. She has no legs and is just floating through the air. Amanda loved dogs very much. One day, she was walking in the park and saw a lovely corgi. The dog was friendly, and Amanda even petted the animal. Soon, the pooch's owner appeared, and the girl asked him how old the dog was. "Well, in 2 years, Luna will be twice as old as she was 5 years ago." Amanda nodded and continued her walk. And did you understand how old the dog was? Luna is 12 years old. Liza worked as a teaching assistant at a college. That day, she had to look after a group of students who were writing an exam. Lisa knew some of them were going to cheat, and indeed, soon after the exam started, the girls spotted one person who was cheating. Who was it? It's the guy in the back of the classroom. He's got the answers written on his arm. Jacob wakes up locked in a basement. He has no idea how it happened or who is behind this. Near his bed, he finds a note. 2 + 2 equals fish. 3 + 3 equals 8. 7 + 7 equals triangle. Explain this and you'll be free. Can you help Jacob get out of the basement? Stack the first number and the second one that is flipped backwards, and you'll get a fish, number 8, and a triangle. 2 guards were looking in different directions. One had to make sure there was no danger coming from the west. The other was turned toward the east. At one point, one of the guards asked the other, "Why are you smiling?" But how could he know his companion was smiling? The men were indeed looking in the opposite directions, but they weren't standing back to back. They were facing each other. Brian was walking down the stairs when his foot slipped and he tumbled. When the guy came to his senses, he discovered he was mostly unharmed, but he couldn't remember anything. Suddenly, 2 women entered the house. They looked exactly the same. When they found out what had happened, each of them started to claim Brian was her husband. Can you help the guy understand which one is his real wife? It's Rachel. She has a tattoo on the same arm as the girl in the wedding photo. Oliver was sailing his yacht when a storm started. The yacht sank in the middle of the ocean. After swimming for hours, the guy finally reached a deserted island. He saw several men there. They told Oliver they would keep him locked in one of the caves on the island. Oliver agreed, but asked them to grant him one last wish. When he told the men what this wish was, they set him free. Why? He said, "I want the smartest of you to lock me there. Oh, by the way, you get extra points if you caught my error in the description. An island with several men on it is not deserted." One of Kenneth's professors at university had an unconventional way of grading his students. On Wednesday, Kenneth and his friends had to write a test, but their professor gave each of them a picture. "You need to figure out how many people there are in this image. Those of you who will come up with the correct answer won't need to write the test." Can you help Kenneth figure out the right number of people? There are 6 people in the picture. 5 of them are visitors, and one more person is looking through a peephole in the painting on the right. Emily was walking in the park when she saw 2 teenagers sitting on a bench. They were arguing who should pay for riding an electric scooter. Each of them claimed it was the other one who used the scooter. Emily didn't need much time to understand who had to pay. Can you figure it out too? Look at the footprints. The girl was the one to ride the electric scooter. Dennis is taking part in a competition. If his last answer is correct, he'll get a prize, an expensive watch. But first, he needs to figure out which of these 2 watches is real and which is just a toy. The watch on the left is a toy. Look at its minute hand. It's too long and won't be able to pass all the way around the watch face. Mr. and Mrs. Anderson wanted to celebrate their wedding anniversary. They were going to organize an extravagant party and invite hundreds of guests. But Mrs. Anderson was worried about all the expensive stuff they had at their villa. The couple decided to invite a detective to look after the guests. And indeed, in the middle of the party, the detective noticed a thief. Look at the people gathered in the garden and try to spot the criminal. It's the guy on the left. He's trying to steal a woman's bracelet. Look at the picture attentively. What is the missing number? It's 4. All these numbers indicate how many times the lines cross in each case. There are 100 books on a shelf. To count off 10 of them, you'll need 10 seconds. So, how much time will you spend counting off 70 books? Just 30 seconds. You need this time to count off 30 books, and the rest will make 70. One morning, Donna came to the office and found a box of chocolates on her desk. There was also a strange note. October 7th, May 3rd, August 1st, January 3rd. Can you help Donna understand who presented her the sweets? Her secret admirer is Ryan. Those are not dates. The number actually means the needed letter in the name of the month. Mark was going to an important business meeting. He was running a bit late. That's why he was driving fast. Unfortunately, the man got into a car accident. Both he and the other driver were okay, but the cars were badly damaged. Mark called the police. When they arrived, Mark explained the situation. "I was driving fast, but I wasn't breaking any rules. Suddenly, a car pulled out in front of me. I didn't have enough time to brake. The other driver exclaimed, "This whole accident is your fault. I was driving slowly, talking to my wife about our weekend plans, and then you appeared out of nowhere." The police officers immediately understood who was responsible for the accident. Do you know it? It was the other driver. He was alone in his car. It means he was talking to his wife on the phone, which is illegal. Detective Mitchell was following a bank robber. But after the criminal turned the corner, he seemed to vanish into thin air. After wandering around for a while, the detective came across a small park with a lake. Right on the shore, there were several marble statues. The man was about to pass by when something drew his attention. He realized where the criminal was. Can you figure it out? One of the statues is looking at its watch. It's the bank robber. James escaped from prison and ran to the countryside. Suddenly, on a small dark road, he saw a police car heading in his direction. James ran toward the car for some time, then jumped off the road and rushed into the woods. Why did he run toward the car first? James was in the middle of a bridge when he saw the car. He had to run toward the vehicle to get off of the bridge.